Welcome to Hacked, the series where we discuss feats, speed, and hacks. And the topic of today is the power of the 27th Wizard King from Black Clover's most recent movie. Conrad Leo's story began as an infant born into a noble family with an ominous thief-like unlocking magic. This magic originally started off being extremely weak, as it was essentially worthless on its own, but with age he discovered the innately sinister potential of key magic. These magic keys he produces grants Conrad the ability to open any space and store various magic spells and tools within them, and it's because of his ability to permanently steal magic and grimoires, as well as rapidly amassing strength of all natures, that he was feared after joining the Magic Knights. If you imagine how freakishly powerful Raya was during the Elf arc with his copy magic, well, a young Conrad was already an entirely different beast to Raya, being able to freely mix and match any number of these acquired magics at his own discretion. During his time as a Magic Knight, he met Julius and a young woman from the Forsaken Realm named Lavilia, who both of which he learned to trust in deeply. Before long, with his unbelievable power, he rose to the rank of captain from a long since disbanded squad named White Serpent. Eventually, he would go on to marry his vice captain Lavilia, and one day received a mission for his squad, but something was off. He had secretly been tricked by the frightful royal faction that feared his power as they did numerous wizard kings before him, such as Edward and Jester, and as a result he lost dozens of his squad members, as well as his lover at the hands of these royals. Conrad, rightfully so, became consumed with anger, and despite Julius's attempt to calm him, his heart continued to blacken. It was from this point that Conrad resolved to erase discrimination and prejudice, dreaming of building a country that everybody could share a laugh, and soon became the Wizard King. Conrad in many ways ideologically aligns with Arstar, with both possessing the magic of never giving up, and his path of corruption represents how easily things can change if one doesn't look beyond the goalpost. Contrary to popular belief, the Wizard King, although an important title, should never be the true end goal, only a stepping stool to a great cause, and Conrad understood this. He needed to bring about a change, and since the highest position in the Clover Kingdom was still not enough, his despair worsened. In his eyes, the only way to change the country is to truly rebuild it from the very ground up. But with him lacking the ability to do so, dangerous thoughts filled his mind, and he began researching into ancient magic tools. Eventually, he even stole the national treasure created by the first King Lumiere himself, the imperial sword Elsdokia, and started a rebellion. 10 years from the events of the manga, a young Julius along with several other captains banded together, and still he was far too powerful, forcing Julius to catch him off guard with a chrono seal, to which during his fight with Partry, he returned more ambitious and stronger than ever. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to drop a like, as it helps this channel massively, and maybe consider subscribing since less than 10% of people who watch my videos do. It's completely free. So, with that being said, exactly how strong is he? It's made apparent during the battle against a young Julius how ridiculously versatile his key magic is, with him using dozens of different affinities ranging from lightning to chain, space, and even telepathy magic. But with the addition of the Imperial Sword, we find that his destructive capabilities increase dramatically. By having access to a soul fragment from every Wizard King before him, he's able to combine their magics into a gargantuan compounded magic with the ability to effectively wipe out the very foundations of the continent. In addition, immediately after his return, we find out that it possesses the ability to siphon the magic of anybody in proximity of the beams that it emits and transfers those powers to Conrad, giving him access to a potentially endless mana source. Key magic and Elsdokia are seemingly a match made in heaven, and much like Lucius, we find out that Conrad is essentially a perfect necromancer. Not only can he resurrect 3 fallen Wizard Kings with their full sense of reasoning intact, his plan was actually to wipe out humanity, and with his own discretion he was going to resurrect all worthy individuals in his new world, devoid of discrimination. Conrad is easily one of the most hacked out mages we've seen in the series, and probably the craziest of all. Being capable of absorbing Arstar's anti-magic using his keys makes this blatantly obvious, albeit it would have messed with his other stolen abilities, but nonetheless, he definitely gets his kudos for these abilities. However, he is not without his weaknesses. A major one being, unlike Yami's Dimension Slash and other Black Clover spells, his ability to steal magic from a target is contingent upon how powerful they are, and so his stealing ability is pretty much a non-factor in a 1v1 against a character who eclipses him in power, and another being how important it is for him to be surrounded by enemies or civilians in which he can cipher power from, as his fighting still demands a ridiculous amount of mana. It is by no surprise that Black Clover characters are fast, and by him being vastly superior to numerous captain to wizard level entities throughout the movie, he would scale to their fastest canonical speed feats. For those of you that don't know, this is actually not just Black Clover's first movie, but its first canon movie, as it was adapted by the screenwriters from the novelization written by Tabata, and the production of the movie was chief supervised by Tabata himself. Tabata also on release date distributed volume 23.5, which establishes that the events take place in between volumes 23 and 24 during the time skip following the Elf arc, in which actually fits very neatly into the timeline. I'm sure some of you guys still have some questions and possible contention, so I've answered them on screen, such as Mary Leona's form, the presence of Nash, but most important, Arstar still having his arm. So as I explained earlier, these events take place before the Dante fight, and so he would need to still have both arms when borrowing more anti-magic from Libe, and when he does so during this movie, Libe states that he'll take payment at a later date, which clarifies that. Now that we've got canonicity out of the way, by being comparable to a post-Elf Arc Black Arstar, he should scale at the very least above Henry's FTL Plus feat, as well as a plethora of lightspeed feats performed during the pre-time skip, making him a well beyond 10 times FTL character. And as for attack potency, this is where things get really interesting. The first line of scaling coming from pre-existing feats prior to the events of the movie, that being how numerous characters who get massively stronger scale to the country level Ancient Demon feat. Not only would a base Conrad be able to exert over 28 teratons of TNT, we see that in the Hajj village, when he transmits some of his magic into the mana vein, he sends out a kingdom-wide earthquake. Given that it splits the earth pretty sizably and is undoubtedly felt by the entire Clover kingdom, it should at least be a 5.5 on the Richter scale, taking several hundred teratons of TNT. To put this into perspective, that's enough energy to carve out a canyon into a continent-sized slab of bedrock. But by far the most impressive feat of this movie is when all hope is lost for Conrad. You see, he still wishes to wipe out the world and rebuild, and so he activates his final spell, Doomsgate. Doomsgate sacrifices one's own lifespan to combine all stolen magic and unleash it from the door. For Conrad, these compounded magics manifest as a satellite or moon. Now, the reason why I say moon rather than your run-of-the-mill meteorite is due to the presence of these signature grooves or dimples known as rills. Rills are specific features found on celestial bodies like the moon, which are associated with geological processes on solid bodies like volcanic activity or tectonic forces, whilst meteors on the other hand are small rocky or metallic objects that are too small and composed of materials that are not conductive to the formation of rills. Working off a basis of satellite composition, the rocky material used in this feat should seemingly be something like a basalt, a volcanic rock formed from solidified lava. Other than the ridiculous mass and density of Conrad's satellite, we see that Conrad casts his spell from somewhere between the lower end of the mesosphere and stratosphere, and using the planetary correction formula we find that the kinetic energy Conrad would have had to produce and the energy Arstar would have needed to counteract him took anywhere from 24 to 143 petatons of TNT, quite literally enough energy to split the world in half. Now, I've seen a lot of people try to downplay Arstar's scaling to this feat by pointing out how he was amped, which he quite rightly was, but people seem to overestimate the degree to which he was amped. We know that everybody who gave magic to Arstar had already had their magic extremely siphoned, not had come back from an incredibly strenuous, unspecified mission, and that the minuscule energy in which they lend Arstar, he's able to generate such significant anti-magic that both spells can be used simultaneously, meaning his anti-magic should be relative to the amount of energy that they gave him. And as such, Arstar would scale to half of the feat, which is still the very low end of multi-continental. All in all, this movie was super refreshing after having waited for the Black Clover anime return for over 2 years. And if you want to request a video like this, check out my Cash App link in bio. And as always, if you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.